Mm-hmm.
with is teams coming off of clinching a division. Are these
Mm.
teams that are worth fading the day after they're popping champagne in the clubhouse?
I think so. There's myriad factors that go into it as far as okay, they've clinched, but is there something else on the table? Are there guys chasing some sort of records? Are you trying to rest guys? Do guys need more experience because maybe you're playing some younger guys down the stretch? So I don't think it's the only factor, but yeah, I do think it's a big factor because once you've clinched, particularly at this time of year when guys have been grinding throughout an entire season, being rested and ready for the postseason is a thing. And then also, some of these guys have been celebrating the night before because they clinched the division. We saw Aaron Boone walking around with Prosecco last night in Toronto celebrating. So I'm not saying they went out and got schlamskied in Toronto, but there is a possibility that some of these teams who have clinched maybe the next day have a bit of a letdown.
I think it's an important point to bring up. But also in
Mm-hmm.
baseball, doesn't baseball feel a little bit different? Where we see guys perform well even when they're hungover. It's more of a skill sport because I do think it's probably the case in very physical sports like football where you won't see the best effort from some of the guys. But maybe you see some of these teams resting some of their big bats, and maybe that's the deciding factor because you still have some of these aces going. Like today, we have Garrett Cole, who I feel like from a pride standpoint still wants to do well for the
Yeah.
Yankees because we all know when Gary Cole does bad, his name is all over the New York Post and how I can't believe we paid this much money for Garrett Cole. So I think it's kind of the case, but maybe not as big of a factor as people probably think.
I think that's fair. I think it, like most things, you want it to be a factor, but don't let it be the only factor. Don't let it influence your bets so much. So, like we say with every single statistic that you see, let it be a factor, but also make sure you take everything else into account because certainly when you're capping any game, there are myriad things you can look at. So, yeah, look at it, but don't just say, oh, well, the Yankees aren't going to be ready just because they clinched a division. There's going to be more to it than
Or because they had one glass of champagne. I would
that.
like to
Right.
think that these guys can handle one glass of champagne. But I think for me, it's more if you are on a team like that, maybe it takes me off of them. Like maybe I'm
Mm.
not betting against them, but maybe it's a no play for me, which is just as important as, actually placing a bet. Cause, if you are off a bet and it ends up losing, you save yourself some money there. So I think it's, like you said, it's one of the ingredients in the stew that they're whipping up. We're whipping up for some of our handicapping plays. So, an important factor to note, though, because it is that time of year.